Two Humorous Nurses would like to acknowledge the true custodians of the land in which we record our podcast, the Yorta Yorta people.
We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders listening today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Safestyle makes stylish and practical safety glasses that take you from the worksite to the weekend. Upgrade your PPE today with their stylish and functional range of safety glasses.
Whether you're on shift, on call, first to the scene or in study mode, Safestyle have you covered. Available in clear UV 400, blue light blocking, transition, polarised and prescription lenses.
We love these safety glasses for their durability and comfort and are excited to share our discount code with you all.
Use our code HUMOROUS10 at checkout for 10% off your order.
That's humorous, HUMERUS 10 at checkout for 10% off.
Two Humorous Nurses with Kelly and Alisha.
The podcast that makes your heart race.
Welcome to Two Humorous Nurses, where we plan to bring you funny, informal, conversational chats about all things nursing.
This episode, I guess, is a real heart starter. Did I write that?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Georgia, or as you probably know her, Nurse Sibs, loves cardiac nursing more than I love coffee.
I actually forget that your name's Georgia because
I know.
So many people do. Or they'll be like, why do people call you Sibs? And I'm like, that's a very valid question.
Well, my nickname was Pubes all through high school, so it's way better.
Pubesy.
Because, well, I have to explain that now. My surname,
We didn't leave that there.
my surname was Van de Munich, and one of my friends thought that was funny because it rhymes with pubic. So they all started calling me pubic, and then it shortened to pubes. So then it'd be like at the supermarket, they're like, pubes! And I would
love that.
Pubes for like 5 years.
Oh, you're a weirdo.
Anyway.
Well, that's great. I used to get, so obviously I got Sibs and then I got like G-Sibs. And then one of my friends used to call me Giblets. And then someone else, no, it gets worse. Someone else was like, oh, Shitley.
Instead of Sibley.
That's not staying. And every time it's like, oh, Shitley. I'm like, oh my God, can we just have Sibs? Like, that's just nice. This thing's not about poo.
Shitley.
Oh my God, best intro ever.
Yeah.
We're here with Georgia Shitley, a clinical nurse specialist in cardiology.
Oh my God.
And a nurse entrepreneur. She loves education and believes it is about empowering others and encouraging critical thinking. Welcome, Shitley.
Shitley. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and now have the giggle.
Oh, so funny.
That's so funny. That's the best intro we've ever had.
Yeah, so good. Thank you for bringing that to us.
I feel like I'm going to regret saying that.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Now everyone will know. Yeah.
10,000 people at some point will have heard you be called Georgia Shitley.
Oh,
Anyway,
God.
Georgia Sibley.
Mhm.
We can get a bit more civilised. Thanks, Kelly.
Oh.
So anyway, we're so excited to have you on this podcast. We've been trying to arrange this for so long.
Since April, when you had your
Oh my God.
event.
My luncheon. Feels like so long ago.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to that, but we want to hear about your journey into nursing so far. Tell us a bit about you.
Oh, I love that question. Well, it's Shitley here, everyone, and let me dive into my nursing journey. Oh, God. Okay, I'll stop bringing it up. So my nursing journey, I guess, when I was in high school, I was that person that just had no idea what I wanted to do. And like, it used to just piss me off so much that people would be like, okay, you're 14 years old. Like, what subjects do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I'm like, I don't even know who I am. Like, how am I meant to know that? So when I left high school, I just went into like a psychology degree because my mum was a psychologist, super random. And then so I'm from Queensland. And when you finish high school, you're 17. And then so the first year out of high school, you turn 18. So like the first semester into uni, I turned 18 and I was like, uni's lame. Going out and getting drunk is so fun. So I was like, I'm going to defer.
Of course.
And I deferred that and then got like another random job for a little while and was kind of in that weird like limbo phase of like, I literally don't know what I want to do with my life. And my mum was quite sick at the time. So she ended up having a lung transplant like 5 years ago now. And so like while she was really sick before she had a transplant, I would obviously see her in hospital a lot. And just kind of got to see like in like quotation marks, like the kind of good nurses and like the kind of bad nurses, and just watching like the difference that, you know, both sides of the coins made in my mum's care, because her like main symptom was shortness of breath on exertion. Like everything took her a really long time, and like watching nurses like have the patience and compassion for my mum versus watching the nurses that are kind of like, come on, like just like hurry up. And I'm like, dude, she can't breathe, like just give her a minute. That kind of like was a thing when I was, you know, in my early 20s, where I was like, I feel like if I was a nurse, I would be a good one. Like I would really try and always treat everyone like how I would want my mum to be treated. I know people say that as like a cliche thing, but like genuinely I was like, you know, if someone's sick, you need to have like that, I guess, level of compassion and empathy to look after them properly. So I started my nursing degree. I moved to Melbourne, started my nursing degree at Deakin, and that was actually really cool. I did like a study tour in uni. I went over to Bhutan in the Himalayas and did like nursing for 2 weeks, which was like so cool. And then just in like anatomy and physiology, like I really liked the heart, and I feel like I just like understood it when a lot of people were like, I just don't get this. Kelly, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
And then like I tried to get my grad year in cardiology, and I got my grad year in like CCU, which was really amazing, and have literally just been there ever since. I started in CCU, and then I went to go to cath lab, was literally in cath lab for like 1 week, like Monday to Friday, and then was like, I'm not going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
So I was like,
why did you think that?
Because there's not a lot, and also no shade to cath lab nurses, but like there's really not a lot of patient involvement. It's very like get the patient in, make them lie down, put a drape on, do the procedure, get them out, get the next one in. And there wasn't that like element of patient education, or like, you know, I guess having the time to explain to them what's going on, because the doctors are like, hurry up, like we need to do everything 5 minutes ago. And also just like, also not throwing shade to doctors, but like different cardiologists, everyone, like I'm sure it's like surgeons where like they all like things done differently.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't see myself feeling rewarded from like not getting like the patient education element, but 2, like every day being like, oh, I'm going to set up my table like this because this doctor likes this and this one doesn't. Like I was just like, I didn't really become a nurse for that.
Yeah.
I became a nurse to like support patients and help them understand what's going on. So I just straight away was like, I don't think I'm going to like this, which was like a shock to me, because I was like, I love cardiology and I think it's so interesting. So cath lab just like made sense.
Yeah.
But then, kind of as like, once I like spoke to my mum at that point and was like, I really am not going to enjoy this, the sort of like temporary option, again in like quotation marks, was for me to work in like the cath lab recovery. So this is at a different hospital to where I work now, but they had like a elective kind of unit where patients come in from home, but also like just a recovery for like pre and post cath lab. And the cath lab nurses hated working there, but I really liked it because it was very just patient education heavy. And so my like temporary thing of being there ended up being like 1.5 years. And then I came back to Melbourne with the intention of going back to CCU. And again, the temporary like place for me to be was in like an elective cardiology unit. And I've been there ever since still, because I was like, there's a lot of perks like working in elective areas in terms of like not working weekends. My unit is open like 24/6. So we close on Saturdays, but we have a permanent night duty staff member. So like I probably do night duty like once a year. So there's like those perks, but also the main thing for me was definitely the patient education. Like I sit down with patients after their procedures and before their procedures and be like, this is why you're having an angiogram. This is what an angiogram is. And then like when we get the reports being like, do you see these pictures? Like this is the part that they needed to put a stent in, because as you can see, there's no blood flow getting past it. And they're like, oh my God, like no one's ever explained it like that. And I'm like, yeah, love that. Like I just absolutely love it.
I feel like that's how a lot of people end up in the jobs that they're in. I feel like that's how Kelly's ended up in the NUM job that she's in. It was like going to be temporary, and now it's still kind of temporary, but looking more permanent. I told myself that I was never going to work in this little hospital because it'd be fucking boring. And here I am 6 years later, like frothing it and wanting to educate everybody and empower everyone to have, you know, great nursing standards and like to teach the next generation of nurses. Like I feel like sometimes you fall into something that you didn't expect. Although you knew you were going to end up in cardiology. I didn't know I was going to end up in mixed med surge with no doctors. And
Oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare.
it is, but I love it.
So for people like us, or not people like us, because not you, but for people like me who don't like hearts and have done 22 years of nursing with multiple ECG study days, and like I reckon I've done 10 ECG study days, if not more. I've stopped doing them now. I think the last one I did was
she gave up.
I did one in 2015 when I first moved to this hospital because I was in urgent care and actually seeing cardiac patients. But then I'm a big believer in if you do an ECG, just get a doctor to look at it. So
oh my God, you're like breaking my heart. No pun intended. No, but see, this is the thing. This is the thing about ECG study days. And this is exactly why I made ECG workshops. Because I've also done like 5 ECG study days and I hate how they're taught because they're so waffly and so like, okay, so like, here's your ECG. Let's sit down for 27 minutes with this like bit of paper and a ruler and like count all these boxes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, people aren't going to do that. Like there's like way easier ways. Oh my God, you're going to get me on a rant now.
Yeah.
There's like
So before you go on your rant, why don't you tell us what cardiac basics we should have, like as an everyday nurse who not cardiac related, maybe would just be like, oh, my patient's tachycardic and the clinical nurse told me to go do an ECG and now I'm going to give it to the doctor. But if I'm looking at it, what are our basics that we should know?
I feel like this is what I tell students who I think actually shouldn't, you're probably going to correct me, but when students come and ask me about ECGs, I want to say to them, shut the fuck up. You don't need to know anything about ECGs. Just close your eyes and hand it to someone who knows because you've got that much going on in your head as a student that you don't need to know. And whereas if it's a grad, I'm like, if you can find the P, the Q, the R, the S, the T, and if you can look at those, you know, in the rhythm strip and tell me if it's normal, that's what I like as a grad.
Yeah.
Right? Kelly's looking at me like she doesn't even know.
It's like, what's a PQRST?
It's this thing.
I feel like there's levels of how much you should know based on your experience and what kind of patients you're working with.
I agree, but I also think that people, like if someone's keen to learn ECGs, like I have taught students like in my workshops who like there was a student recently where they're also a Rousson and they did my workshop and they had a great level of like understanding because they were interested and they were taking the initiative to like look at ECGs and look stuff up. And then at their Rousson job, they like asked a nurse about an ECG and it was like a really good question. Like it was like, oh, hey, like, is this like flutter or something? And the nurse was like, you shouldn't even know that. And she's like, but I do. And I'm like asking a question, like if this is new for the patient. And I was like so sad because I'm like, that's like not an attitude to have. Like if someone like, yes, like when you're a student, there's so much to learn, but like being told for 3 years or 4 years or however long that like, oh, you don't need to know that. You don't need to know that. And then becoming a nurse and every single met call and every single code blue, anytime someone gets chest pain, anytime someone comes to ED, they all get an ECG. So like, being told like you don't need to know it, but then in real life you kind of do need to know it. It's like a bit like I used to even get frustrated when I was a grad as well. I think with ECGs though, like, and this is, you know, a lot of my Instagram page now is like, you just need to be told where to look and what you're looking for, you know, like it's all well and good to be like, here's like, this thing should be 3 small boxes or 4 big boxes or whatever. Like that honestly goes in one ear and out the other, even for me. I'm like, you're just saying words. But if someone's like, you know, if there's a big gap between something, it means there's a delay. I'm like, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Exactly. If it doesn't look like, if you can, I feel like if you can compare anything to a normal ECG, like, you know, where the QRS complex is nice and narrow. And if you're comparing the ECG you've just taken and it's really wide, well, there's something wrong. Like, you know, if you can identify the abnormalities.
And I think nurses are very good at spotting an abnormality.
It's literally spot the difference.
Yeah.
Like if someone brings, and this happens all the time, where someone will bring an ECG to me and be like, hey, can we go through this? And I'm like, let's look at the one before. And I will like say in my head or even out loud, like, what am I seeing? So if it's like, oh, they've got, you know, T-wave inversion in like these 3 leads and then, or they're everything's completely normal. And then the new one, I'm like, oh, they have T-wave inversion in these 3 leads. Like you're literally just spotting the difference, but then that's how you can escalate like appropriately. So like, I know people hate ECGs and I get it, but it's because they're taught in such a confusing dumb way.
That's exactly right. True. And I think you can be taught, like the person that did the ECG course, the last one that I did, like he loved it, right? Like he loved cardiac, he loved the heart. He was like,
who is he?
Yeah. he's at Bendigo Health. I don't know if he's there anymore, but he was like, this organ is the best part of the human body. Like it is
that's
literally,
what I think.
Yeah, I don't, but anyway, he's like, and the way, I think the way he taught it made me excited about it. Like I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to remember this. And then the next day I did advanced life support training. And I forgot about hearts. I was like, oh, no, I'm definitely going to remember this advanced life support training. And you know what I remember from that? Just, you know, all the A drugs and the H's and the T's and 20 mil saline flushes. So I learned enough to get me through.
But that's fine.
Exactly.
Even like if you really don't want to learn ECGs, like, okay, first of all, again, hurting my heart. But like if like you're doing an ECG on a patient, you're doing it for a reason, right?
Absolutely.
So escalate it.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what
that's
I mean?
exactly
like,
right.
Your patient has chest pain, do an ECG, escalate it.
It's
Your
like
patient
when
looks
people
like they're about to die.
Kelly got really good at like sending ECGs to the cardiologist, like, and to the on-call doctor.
Yeah, mate. If I'm going to do an ECG, expect a photo of it or a fax of it to the clinic. People that would do an ECG and then put it in the doctor's box to review the next morning when they come in. I'm like,
oh my God, no,
sorry.
don't tell me that.
I'm sorry, but why did you do that ECG? Don't do it. If you don't want the doctor to look at it straight away, don't do it.
Yeah.
Like in my head, I'm like, even where I worked in the country in WA, we had an ECG hotline. So you would fax an ECG down with the patient details and you would send it down and would go to some flight desk at whatever hospital was on call for the after hours weekend period, and they would review your ECG and call you with a plan or send it back with a note saying, oh, it's okay. Like, so you could put it back in the file to say it had been reviewed. And I feel like every ECG needs medical review, regardless.
Yeah, I'm like, can I have that job?
Yeah, I know. How fun would it be? Sit there with
sitting
that
at a desk. I'm like,
ECG.
They're about to crash. I would do something quickly. Okay, bye.
Like, too late. Can't answer the phone. I'm doing CPR.
Why are they not answering me? They've got no rhythm.
Speaking of rhythm, what's your favorite cardiac rhythm? And why?
Oh my God. I just love that this is a question. So I don't know why, but I really like complete heart block. Like, not for the patients.
I wouldn't even know what it looked like on an ECG.
Yeah, look, you guys need to come to my workshop, honestly. I also get excited like that guy at Bendigo.
Google.
Yeah, I was going to Google what it looks like.
No, okay, so in like a summary, on an ECG, there's P waves and there's QRS complexes, but they're not talking to each other. So like the atria are firing and so are the ventricles, but there's no communication between the two.
Oh, I was going to say that was my favorite, but I didn't know what it was called.
Oh, bless you. Yeah, so complete heart block or third degree heart block.
Yeah. Love that.
So like, on an ECG, like people can often like, if they look too quickly or they're like, oh yeah, there's P waves and there's QRS complexes, but their heart rate's like 30. I'm like, no, you need to look and make sure that that's not complete heart block. Because if their heart rate's that slow, it's obviously
There's
not.
a reason.
Yeah.
And it's okay if they've got P waves and QRS complexes, but the P waves have to come before every QRS complex.
Yes.
And then it doesn't. See, I know a little bit. I don't know as much as I think I should. But I do know a bit.
Yeah, you do.
But I should do your course, really.
Yeah. Well, come on.
Do you know what my favorite rhythm is?
Oh my God.
My favorite rhythm is SVT.
Because you don't have to show what? SVT.
SVT, A, because I know what it is. B, I know how to treat it. And C, I'm pretty sure my patient's not going to die from it. So therefore it's okay. Asystole is fine if I'm like, it's an arrest and I just get there. Because then I'm like, non-shockable rhythm.
Do you know what my favourite rhythm is?
No,
I've done ALS.
Yeah.
I'm not shocking that. Just standing there doing nothing.
And then I'll be like, hang on. Is this
Fine VF?
Is it just that one of the leads aren't on properly?
That's right. Check your positions, people.
I will say I actually had a patient go into asystole once, like in theatre, And the anaesthetic registrar was like, shit.
Step one in Doctor's ABCD.
Shit. And then he was like,
Danger.
check the leads. So I checked the leads. I'm like, no, they're on. And he's like, anyway, he gave her adrenaline and then she just like spontaneously.
Wow, that's fun.
That's so funny. I had a patient once. I still just can't believe this was a thing, but they got transferred from another hospital for like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like 17-second pauses, which like that's like it's not a pause till people pause. Anyway, so this like patient comes in and like I admitted them and they were 100% fine, like just talking like you and I. And I'm like, you know, were you dizzy? Like, did anything happen when you were having these pauses?
Yeah.
The patient's like, no, like I literally have been 100, like felt 100% this whole time. And I was like, that's just so weird. And I looked through the rhythm strips and the pauses was where a lead had come off and it was like a perfect flat line. And I was like, how many doctors did this go through for them to be like, yep, that's definitely a pause. Let's transfer them to another facility. And then we literally discharged them and he went home.
That's so funny. That's crazy.
Oh my God.
That's a great story though.
Yeah. We had a patient when I worked in Broome that was on telemetry. And he'd been having these fainting episodes and the doctor was sure that it was cardiac related, right? A young guy, young, fit, healthy guy. And I was on night shift and we were sitting there and the telemetry machine just screamed at us and like started spewing out paper. And so we race in and he's like, oh. Anyway, he'd come to, like he had a minute of like flatline. And then obviously he had a fainting episode and then he'd woken up as we raced in there. So anyway, so my job then for the rest of the night was to sit next to his bed. And I'm like, yeah, because he's going to faint while I'm sitting there. And they're like, he's not fainting. He's fainting because his heart's stopping. Like,
So you can jump on his chest.
No, they wanted me to know if it was real. So my job as the EN on shift was to sit in the room and special him while we waited for the alarm. Every time he fell asleep, like not just asleep, but like he obviously like his head would drop asleep.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, it was, and I was like, fuck. And one of the nurses was like, just whack him on the chest every time.
Yeah.
And I was like,
wake that boy up.
In 2005, that's what you did, clearly.
What do they call it? Something cardiac punch? Is that what it is?
Yeah, something thump.
Yeah.
Anyway, I never
You
did.
see it
I
in the
didn't
movies
do
all the
that.
time. You see it on Grey's
Boom,
Anatomy.
yeah.
I didn't do that, but it was very interesting. He ended up getting transferred to the city, and he had to have an automated, like a defibrillator implanted.
Yeah.
Heart doesn't work.
Yeah, so it was so interesting. I was like,
See, and you think you don't like hearts?
I
That
don't.
sounds like a great
What a stupid
experience.
thing. He was so like.
I thought this was
normal.
going to be something like he wanked off and every time.
No.
he would go,
Yeah, that's what I
No,
thought. I was
so
like,
that
where's
was
this
gonna be
going?
tea. Yeah.
You know, that's like actually a thing. It's disgusting.
Oh.
Where I've seen it, where like they'll like alarm for like VT or VF in hospital
I know.
masturbating, and I'm like, boys, wait till you get home.
Oh my God.
This is not the place.
No, impossible.
And everyone rushes in because they think it's VT or VF, and they're like, oh, there's nothing to see here. We're like, are you okay? Oh, yeah, I'm great.
That is gold.
Oh, it's so wrong. What do you find most challenging and rewarding about cardiology? The best and worst.
The best and worst. The best, just to sound like a broken record, is just patient education. I really like that, you know, all the things that I know and understand, I can explain to patients in like plain English, and they actually understand it. Like I find that, and like same for their family members. Like family members are always stressed out and worried and stuff, and just being able to like explain things in a way they understand, I find really, really rewarding. I think the most challenging, which I don't see this as often now that I'm in an elective unit, but we definitely still see it, is like, and I'm sure this is in a lot of areas, but just like when there's like nothing else that can be done for someone, like because of their heart. So like with heart failure or something, if they're like not a candidate for a transplant for whatever reason, and like they know that and you know that, and they're kind of just like still, you know, living life, but like essentially just like, it seems like they're just like waiting to die. Like I find that really like hard. Yeah, that's probably like the most challenging thing. Because like the other things with cardiology, like when there's like always like code blues and met calls and it's busy, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm like, give me emergencies all day, every day. I want to fly in and be like, we need pads, we need this. Like, I love it.
No
love it.
thanks.
Someone asked me the other day, we had a locum doctor come and work in our hospital, and she was like, what would your dream job be? And because I was saying how I ended up there because, you know, it's just sort of where I ended up. She was like, well, what would your dream job be? And I'm like, seriously? I'm like, either back in anesthetics, or I would just go and work in resus and just do airway, like airway all day, every day. And we
Really?
and we had an agency nurse standing there going, oh, well, I work at the Epworth sometimes, or I don't know if it was the Epworth, somewhere. She's like, I work there sometimes, and the last time I worked there, they had one nurse manning 2 airways in resus because they had no one else airway qualified. And I was like,
Oh my
holy
God.
shit, like, can you imagine?
I actually hate airway.
That hurts my throat.
I
when
know.
you say that.
Yeah. I know it comes before, like A comes before C, but I'm
It's
like,
right.
who needs an airway? I'm like, what rhythm are they in?
Stick that vagina down their throat and be done with it. The LMAs.
They actually do look like vaginas. I like every time we do ALS, I'm like, oh, like just don't talk to me about the airways. Give me the rhythms.
I'm like that when I think about the drugs. I'm like, oh, don't talk to me about the drugs because they all
Yeah.
have the same name. And
They all start with A.
doses. Yeah, so
Yeah.
stupid.
You're like, ah, bit of this, bit of that.
Like the one for SVT start with S. And the
Yeah.
that would just make so much more sense. And they could all have the same dose. That would be great too.
That would be great, right? Why do they have to have such different doses
I know.
and units? Like, we're simple people.
Exactly. Well, speaking of simple people, they've put on the side of our crash cart, we literally have like, it's an A4 piece of paper that's laminated. There's like 6 of them. And they've got the drug name in like massive letters.
So you can just flip to
It
it.
literally says like the drug name, what it's for, exactly what the dose is, and then how often to give it. And it's in like massive letters. So if you're having like an arrest, you can quickly like just
Love
like
that.
grab the one that's got the drug that you
But
need. and
that's
it's like,
great.
Make
so
life
good.
easy.
I'm like,
I love that.
Yeah, it's
Especially because we don't do them often enough.
Yeah.
Like,
it's different if you're using them all the time, but for me,
Yeah.
I like the time I remember them is the day before my ALS assessment, and I make sure.
Yeah.
exactly when I read up on them. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you.
Do you have to deal with a lot of like emotional family members, or like do you have a lot of those like difficult conversations with people? I guess you touched on that before about like those people that kind of, you know, have no
choice
hope.
options. Yeah.
Yeah, I do like to, in terms of like, I guess bad news, breaking bad news. Like you know how I guess a lot of nurses and stuff will, or like, let's just take a patient is in hospital and all the nurses, all the doctors, everyone knows that like on this scan or on the angiogram, whatever, that it's like really bad news. And the patient's just like sitting there for hours and hours and hours, like waiting for the doctors to come and talk to them. Yeah. I know a lot of nurses feel and I would feel like this if it wasn't something that I understood so well, but they don't feel comfortable going and talking to the patients about the results. Whereas because I know what it means and what the like next steps are, I actually don't mind having those conversations, because like I've been a patient before, and like I said, my mum's been a patient before, and I hate when you're just sitting around waiting for someone to tell you something and you don't know what's going on. So like I've sat down with patients and their like relatives before, and I remember once I like literally pulled a chair over to the bed space, and this patient's wife was like, oh, it like can't be good if you're going to sit down. And I was like, oh, you know, like I've just been running around, but by the way, your husband has triple vessel disease. You will not be going home today. It was bad. But like, I was like, you know, I feel like there's a way of, I guess, approaching those like conversations, because at the end of the day, like, yes, like they're patients and we're nurses, but we're all like just people, and withholding information and being like dilly-dallying around the point isn't usually helpful, unless, you know, obviously they're like hysterical and freaking out. You don't want to be like, you know, making the situation worse. But yeah, like having those difficult conversations, if it's something that I feel like I can actually answer all their questions with, so like anything about cath lab things, I'm sweet with. Yeah, I don't really mind that. And then I guess like emotional kind of family members. Again, like I'm just such a big believer in like just communicate with people. Just tell them, like, if I was with the patient and they were like deteriorating or like arresting or something, just like beeline it for their family and just be like, there is a lot of people that are about to come in this room right now because your relative is very unwell, but all of these people are trained to like fix the situation, and there's going to be a lot going on. We just need you to move out. I will come and get you in 5 minutes and I will tell you what's going on. But right now we need to do our job and you need to move.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because like if you're like, oh, just go over there, the family member's going to be like, what? Like, what the fuck is going on?
Exactly right.
Do you know what I mean?
I feel like you've nailed that conversation. I'm like, I need to write that down as a script for like to use. I feel like working in kids, the biggest thing I took away from working in kids ward was like, you don't like to be surprised. So, and you need them to trust you. So you've got to be honest with them. And I feel like I've taken that in all of my nursing. Like I like to tell people in that instance, like if I've hit the code button, I'm like, just letting you know, a lot of people are about to rush here to your bedside. And you need to lay there and just do as you're told, like, and that kind of thing.
Because you don't like waffling and like not getting to the point. And, you know, some people are better at communicating like succinctly and than others. But like, I remember like, even when I was a grad, I was in the room, this is like burnt into my brain, was in the room when someone arrested, and I like yelled out to my like nurse in charge, because it wasn't like, you know, at uni where they teach you about like a cardiac arrest, and it's always like you walk into the room and like Bob is like unconscious on the floor, and it's like this really like controlled thing. This was nothing like that. Like this patient was like in the chair, they like their whole body just like flipped, and I literally was like, what the fuck is going on? Their monitor was like going off, and my nurse in charge that came in, so skilled, so amazing, cannot for the life of them like just be succinct. So she's like, oh, like I need you to, and I'm like literally sitting there like, what are we doing? And she was like, press the buzzer. I'm like the yellow one, and she's like, no like the code button. And I was like, what? And she was just like and I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, because I was like, I just need to be told like the patient needs to be in the bed, or like we need to do CPR or whatever. And so like I've learned from that experience that like in those situations, like it's not even about like being polite or being nice or being friendly. Like if you need someone to fucking move, tell them to move. And like you can give them some context. Like you can be like, we need you to move because we're like, there's about to be 10 people in here and we need to do our jobs. But yeah, there's definitely like a skill in being able to just communicate the point of things quickly.
I've apologized to my staff after an arrest and being like, sorry, hope you're all okay. Yeah, that went pretty well.
Everyone's just like crying. You're like,
no, I think people appreciate when you can delegate and when you can give your instructions. Absolutely. But sometimes you're like, you need to stop that and move on. Like sometimes you like, and I get a bit, because your adrenaline's all pumping, so I get a bit like, not aggro, but I'm like very clear about forceful. When people need to stop doing that shit and move on and get
but that's what you need, especially if you're like in my department, I'm like one of the more senior nurses, and I've been in those situations where like, you know, the whole like Met call team comes or whatever, and everyone's chatting, and I'm just at the head of the bed, and I'm like, can everyone just stop speaking for a second? Because I'm like, no one can hear what's going on, and like it's just like you just sometimes need someone to be like, right, like, come on guys, this is what we need to do, and this is like, that's like one of the things in cardiac that like, I know it sounds really scary, but like people can crash so hard and so fast because like, you don't always know the full backstory of like, you know, like someone could present with like, you know, cute little old lady with like a few syncopal episodes or pre-syncopal episodes, and then it turns out they're in complete heart block and any minute could drop that rhythm. And so it's like, you know, I you know, when you hear people come onto certain wards and they'll be like, oh, like this is not busy, or like this is not heavy, or like they're just a bit judgy. I hear that about cardiac all the time. And I'm like, it might seem all right because everyone's all right now, but trust me, if they're going to crash, it will happen any second. And it's usually, unless it's like, you know, a very, I guess, expected or like anticipated, or there's like good senior staff around, it can be really messy. And
You're
like,
unprepared, like if it happens
Yeah.
in that second, you know.
yeah,
and,
yeah,
like sometimes the stars align for people. Like they might crash and a nurse is standing right next to them.
yeah,
Other people might crash and you're in the toilet, and then
Yeah.
the girl that's looking after your lot is, you know, with another patient. Like it's
like the Wiggle, you know, he collapsed on stage with his heart condition.
yeah,
Just happened to be an off-duty ICU nurse right there who knew how to put the defibrillator on and saved his life.
yeah,
Like, you know, timing.
sometimes it's just luck and
Absolutely,
timing,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. And like messy codes are never like nice. But again, like airway breathing, who needs it, you know?
Without the heart, it's
Their heart's beating, they're fine.
What are your plans for the future? I'll get back to you.
Future Nurse Sibs. Actually, so this is so exciting. I just hired someone, which is like mind blowing for
you
me.
boss lady.
like a PA.
I'm a boss. Yeah, so I just hired someone because I have like some, you know, big grand plans, and you know, there's certain things that like I can't like outsource, you know, like me writing like my ECG posts or like creating workshops, like people like them because it's taught in the way that I teach them. So there's like certain things like that take up a lot of my time that I like doing, but I just like, I can't outsource it. So I've got someone to now help me with like just some like sort of like assistant kind of social media kind of stuff. But I'm really excited now because I feel like my time is like going to be a little bit more freed up to make epic things. And one of those epic things is going to be like a self-paced online ECG course.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, because with my workshops, like I guess like pain point of them always was like every time I announced one, instantly people would message me and be like, I can't come on that day, or like I've got a shift. And it's like, I know that we're all nurses and I know that we all have like different rosters and different times, but like I just have to choose dates and then hope that people can come along kind of thing. So by making like a self-paced version of that, that people can kind of do in their own time, I think it will allow like a lot more people to be able to, actually learn the content, and not in like the boring ECG study day kind of ways, because I do not teach them like that. I teach them very like visual and simple and just like to the point. So that's taking up a lot of my time at the moment, because building an online course takes a very long time.
Yeah, for sure.
And then of course my luncheon.
Oh yeah, I was going to say the luncheon and Sibs by Design. Like we want to hear about what's happening in that space.
Yeah, so I've just started planning. I say planning, I sent one email to Crown about doing my luncheon again next year. So I like, when I think about like the last 12 months of being like, you know, Nurse Sibs and having a business, like my luncheon is always the thing that stands out to me as like my favorite part, because it was just so epic. And I can't believe still that it came together how it did. And that, you know, we had like Lisa come along and like you guys come along, and we got to meet like awesome people like Robin, and just like, I just think it was epic. So
fallout from that was probably more than you ever imagined. Like I think that one event that you put on actually had such a positive impact on so many people, and us included.
I think because there's not many nursing events in that space. There's none that are like luxury and that make you feel appreciated and that are there for you. Like, and I don't want to sit there and fucking learn. I don't want to hear about what's new in DKA. I don't care. Give me some news. Give me some interesting people to listen to.
Yeah.
And let's have some time. Like, there's not enough of that.
Next time, though, no salmon.
Yeah.
No salmon, really?
I mean, well, we're from the country. The fish has to travel too far to get up. So we don't eat it that much.
Some Murray cod.
Crown's like, excuse me, no. There is not a chance we'll be doing that.
Great.
But yeah, no, that's literally, I'm not even joking. You've basically just taken like my thoughts of why I created that event and my Sydney event for that exact reason. Like, I obviously love education and I love teaching, you know, cardiac things, but I genuinely think that nurses are not celebrated enough. We see insane things every single day. and don't bat an eyelid to it or like push it down to the point that it's like we need a psychologist to help us, like whatever it is. We deserve to have like more than one event that is like, guys, we do a great job and like let's, you know, enjoy that. So
go out, get drunk, listen to some cool people talk.
Yep.
And
have a good time.
Have fun with other nurses who understand you. And it doesn't matter if you're all sitting around talking nursing, because we all love it anyway. But it was a great way. I mean, we met people that like they didn't even know who we were, and we just had a great conversation on the table. It wasn't until afterwards they were like, "Oh shit, that's you," and we're like, "Oh yeah." Anyway. But it was so fun to just let loose in a way that celebrated nurses, and I think like you should be commended for that. Because
thank you.
No problem, girls.
Definitely be there next year, and every year afterwards, because
and we'll be staying the night next time. We won't
we will be
off.
Yeah, no,
be drinking.
Yep, no, we love that. It'll be epic. I'm hoping for like very similar vibes, but like just bigger and better. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, love it. Can't wait.
We've got some word association for you, Sibs.
Oh wow, okay, yep.
You ready?
It's like just.
Am I just saying whatever comes to my mind?
The first thing that comes to your head, it's got to be quick. You ready?
Okay.
Infarct.
Shit.
Regurgitation.
Oh my god. Mitral valve?
Prick.
What? Prick?
Prick.
Finger?
Boys.
Gross.
Potato.
Like me sometimes.
Pump.
Heart.
Catheter.
Not for a penis.
Toxic.
Toxic.
Culture?
Fart.
Funny.
That's all we got. Not for a penis. Can you tell me catheter's not for a penis?
For your heart.
Well, that's like the angiogram. Like they put a catheter up. A catheter's just a tube. Everyone thinks it's just for a willy.
You're right. You're actually right about that. It's like Panadol's become the universal term for paracetamol.
Yeah. Like we'll say to patients will come in for an angiogram and we'll be like, oh, you know, like what procedure are you having? And they'll be like, oh, they're putting a camera in my arteries. And we're like, it's not a camera, it's a catheter. And they're like, oh, no, I'm here for my heart. And we're like, yeah. We won't be going near your genitals. It's fine. Yeah. Keep your willy in your pants.
Unless you're on telemetry in room 24.
Oh, this episode's given me tachycardia. See what I did there? Probably shouldn't joke given your episode that you had yesterday.
Yeah, well, story of my life. Here I am drinking a Red Bull.
Do as I say, not as I do. You can follow Georgia or Nurse Sibs at her Instagram at Nurse Sibs. You can follow us at Two Humorous Nurses Podcast. And show us some love on whatever platform you listen to us on. You also have a podcast. Quickly plug that too.
Yeah, go on.
Oh yeah, I do have a podcast. So my podcast is having a little crisis at the moment, but
we have those weekly.
Yeah, right? I feel like we need to talk offline about this because I'm like, what direction am I going in? Like it's
we have that weekly too.
No, so I have a podcast called Sibs by Design, which I made in like the depths of my burnout earlier in the year because I was having a crisis about not wanting to have like my entire identity associated with being a nurse because obviously like I run a business, and I like business and like personal development and like, you know, a bit woo-woo stuff like the universe and manifesting and like just things that aren't nursing. So yeah, my podcast is a little bit nursing, a little bit like businessy and all that other stuff I just mentioned. But yeah, I really like podcasting. So fun.
It is fun.
Like I genuinely love it.
I love that that's become part of my identity now. But I think I forget it sometimes. Like sometimes I forget that I've been a podcaster for 2 years.
She's a podcaster.
Yeah, 2 years, guys. Congratulations and happy birthday.
Thank you for being a part of that.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is fun.
It is fun. We love it.
Love it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. And don't forget, you can send us some love by sending us a coffee in our link tree. You can buy some virtual coffee and send us an email at hello@twohumorousnurses.com. Tell us your stories. Give us some episode suggestions. We have actually done some episodes based on listener suggestions. Anyway, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.